This morning, President Trump signed an order essentially recriminalizing, if you will, or giving a specific criminalization to the act of burning the American flag. Now, President Trump has stated in today that would come with an automatic 1 year in prison sentence. Now, there's a little bit of nuance to it because he's saying, look, if you burn the American flag, you're likely doing it to incite some kind of bigger, broader, violent plan. So whether that's to cause a riot or something like that. I understand that point of view. But then there's the free speech point of view. If you start criminalizing things to this extent of burning the American flag, when we live in a country where you are supposed to be able to speak out against your government, you are supposed to be able to speak out against even your own country when you feel like they are doing wrong. I understand. I don't agree with burning the flag. I think it's incredibly disrespectful to the people who support America, to the troops, to everything that we stand for. However, do I believe it should be criminally illegal? I do not.
The purpose of it under Section 1 talks about the American flag as a special symbol in our national life that should unite and represent all Americans of every background and walk of life. Desecrating it is uniquely offensive and provocative. Just on that, though, that is what the First Amendment protects. Yeah. It protects offensive and provocative speech. But it goes down and says, notwithstanding the Supreme Court's rulings on First Amendment protections, the court has never held that the American flag desecration conducted in a manner that is likely to incite imminent lawless action or is an action amounting to, quote, fighting words is constitutionally protected. So here's the nuance they're getting there, because the Texas versus Johnson case from the 80s was where an individual in outside of the Dallas Convention Center, where the RNC was happening, was protesting Ronald Reagan, burned a flag as a symbol. He was arrested by Texas statute, and that statute, though, did say Texas statute prevented the desecration of venerated object, including the American flag, if such action were likely to incite anger in others. So the case did rely on a statute that had some of that within it, but the Supreme Court held that flag burning constitutes symbolic speech protected by the First Amendment. So what the Trump administration is saying here is that it's not necessarily just the act of burning the flag itself, but they will start to look into these cases where they see lawless activity and where there is protests that involve flag burning, and they will see if the people that are doing that have conducted other criminal offenses, whether it be inciting riot, whether it be it's not their flag, they ripped it down from a public park and they burned it, things of that nature, which would be criminal activity.
Right.
They are going to start doing investigations into that.
Even flames in public. I'm sure there are rules about controlled fires and that kind of thing. So I get that.
Even in California, where, you'd see mass takeovers of streets and them burning flags and things in the streets, that's a place where there shouldn't be uncontrolled burns. Let's just go ahead and admit the truth.
And that's what
but there was no prosecution of these individuals because, and partially probably because the DOJ was maybe concerned about going after a case that would have that element, and they try to claim free speech.
Yeah, does it specifically say burning flags, or is it desecrating flags? Is it destroying American flags? Is there other words to it? Is it specifically flame-based? I mean, that is something that does change the way you look at it, because I understand open flames in public, probably not a great idea.
So the title of the executive order is prosecuting burning of the American flag. Yeah. They do use the term desecrating it, as well as burning this representation of America may incite violence and riot. American flag burning is also used by groups of foreign nationals as a calculated act to intimidate and threaten violence against Americans because of their nationality and place of birth.
Let's go ahead and take some phone calls. Ralph, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm a Marine. I served for 8 years in the United States Marine Corps. I love this country. I'm the shield against the tyranny of evil men. But I tell you what, I 100% am against putting people in jail for burning the flag. If you want to burn the flag, you go ahead and burn the flag. That's your right. I stood up to defend that, and I will always stand up to defend that. I want you to have your free speech. While I may not agree with it, while I may abhor what you are doing, it is still your right as a citizen to do those things.
Ralph, I really do appreciate you calling in and having your point of view. Obviously, thank you so much for your service as a Marine for 8 years, and the passion clearly is still there. God bless you. God bless your family. I'm glad that you're still out there fighting the good fight. And again, that's how I feel as well, which is I may find it disgusting that this is done. I may find it just horrible and un-American and all of those things. But does that mean I believe it should be criminally prosecuted behavior? If we're talking about the solo act of destroying an American flag, I get concerned. I get concerned that also it is an unnecessary distraction that people can point to President Trump to show to maybe illustrate some of the descriptors that they've had for him, whether it's a fascist or whatever it may be. Because when you start criminalizing speech against the government, which is what you're saying, that obviously starts to put a lot of us on our heels.
Well, and once again, the direction to the Department of Justice to look into these things, there is more nuance to it, obviously, in the way it has to be written because of Supreme Court precedent. Yeah. But I think, to your point, and I agree with the caller as well wholeheartedly, that it can give also the optics of starting to crack down on opposition speech. Right. When you say you always have to think what the next administration will do. Well, if you're talking about speech that incites violence or that could
they disagree with,
then you start talking about pro-life protesters. That's immediately where my mind goes. And we had a client that was
often show grotesque imagery
and that was beaten brutally, that wasn't showing grotesque imagery.
But it does happen, and it should be protected.
But once again, so then can the administration say your speech, if you are protesting abortion or standing up for the unborn, that can make some people mad, therefore that could incite a riot, and then cite even cases that we've handled in saying, therefore you cannot do this. This is not protected speech. That's the slippery slope you have to be careful about. That's why, as you say, we are a free speech organization. We do have to think about these consequences, unintended consequences. Now, once again, is this all for show? Because many of the things, if they're saying it incites a riot or if it is desecration of public property, like they're tearing down a flag off of a courthouse and burning it, those can be prosecuted in and of themselves without having to make it about the American flag. I think that's where it could also put some of the cases in jeopardy, and maybe why some of the previous departments of justice wouldn't go down that tactic is because of the free speech angle. And if you try to highlight it as that, instead of saying you're violating all of these laws, which are on the books illegal, regardless if it's an American flag, then if you're tearing down even just a sign from a public space and burning that, you could probably be some sort of vandalism or criminal mischief. I think that maybe you could just still prosecute those cases and not even have to rise it up to this level. But it does, at least for a story for the administration, give that patriotic American feeling to many people within the base, I feel like. And so that's where it gets tricky.